The moment I knew, it wasn't a dramatic confession. No lipstick on a collar. No secret texts or drunken phone calls in the middle of the night. It was a single word. Daddy. But she wasn't looking at me when she said it. She was looking at my brother. Let me back up. My name's Mark. I've always been the steady one in the family, the older brother by 2 years, the guy who double-checks the oven before bed and sets out the recycling on Thursday nights without fail. The kind of man who people say is reliable, sometimes like it's a compliment, sometimes like it's a shrug. My wife, no, my ex-wife, her name is Rachel. And I loved her. God, I loved her. We met in college. She was that kind of beautiful that doesn't try, hair always a little wild, eyes like they were hiding a joke. We had the kind of love that felt like momentum, always moving, always certain. We got married young, bought a little house with a crooked fence and a lemon tree in the back that never bore fruit. For a while, it felt like everything was lining up. Then came Lily, our daughter, our miracle, and everything changed in the way it's supposed to when you become a parent. I started measuring my days by nap schedules and bottle rotations. I stopped sleeping, started worrying, fell even harder for Rachel watching her become a mother. It was hard, yes, but it was real, and real felt like enough. Then 2 years ago, my brother Chris moved in. Just for a few weeks, he said. He'd just gotten out of a rough breakup, was crashing on couches, trying to reset. Chris was always the golden boy, the charmer. The kind of guy who didn't follow rules so much as sidestep them with a grin. We couldn't have been more different. Where I was quiet, he was loud. Where I was consistent, he was chaos with a 5 o'clock shadow. But he was still my brother. So I gave him the guest room. He got along with Lily instantly, like, weirdly well. She lit up when he walked into the room. Started following him around, mimicking the way he whistled, the way he spun her in the kitchen. I thought it was sweet. Thought maybe she sensed the sadness in him, the way kids sometimes do. Rachel loved it, too, said it was nice to see him smiling again. But things started shifting. Little things. Like the way Rachel started lingering in the kitchen a little longer when Chris was there. The way they laughed at jokes I wasn't part of. The nights when I'd find them on the back porch talking in low voices, close but not touching. I told myself it was nothing. Because sometimes, denial feels safer than suspicion. Then Chris moved out. Said he found a place with some buddies on the other side of town. Things went quiet after that. Still. Almost too still. Rachel started being extra affectionate. Little kisses on the cheek. Text in the middle of the day saying she missed me. Wanted to plan a weekend away. I thought maybe we were reconnecting. Maybe the storm had passed. Then, one Saturday morning, a few months after Chris moved out, we were at the park. Lily was playing in the grass, chasing bubbles. Chris showed up, said he was in the neighborhood, thought he'd say hi. Rachel smiled like someone had said her name in church. Lily ran to him, arms outstretched, and as he scooped her up, she looked right at him and said it. Daddy. I laughed at first. A short, confused kind of sound. But Rachel didn't. Her face, it froze. Chris said something quickly, brushing it off. She's just being silly, huh, kiddo? But the color had drained from his face. And Lily? She just leaned her head on his shoulder like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't say anything then. But inside, something cracked. That night, while Rachel slept, I stared at the ceiling and listened to the silence between us. And I thought about timing. About the months Lily was conceived. About the way Rachel and Chris had circled each other like magnets with no shame. And the next morning, I made a choice I never thought I would. I ordered a paternity test. Behind her back. Behind everyone's back. All I needed was a swab from Lily. Something small. Something she'd never remember. And when it arrived in the mail 3 days later, I felt like I was opening a door I couldn't close again. Because here's the truth. When a child looks at another man and calls him daddy, you don't need a test to know. But you need one to stop pretending you're wrong. There's a moment right after you seal the test envelope, saliva sample tucked inside, return label pressed down, where your hands don't quite feel like your own. I stood in the kitchen holding that envelope like it was a loaded weapon. Lily's breakfast plate was still on the table. Half a banana. Fingerprint smudges on the cup. Her favorite cartoon playing faintly from the living room. And all I could think was, what if I just don't send it? What if I let this go? Pretend the park moment was just an accident, a slip of a toddler's tongue? But then I remembered Rachel's face. Not confused. Not amused. Just caught. So I mailed it. 2-day shipping. I'd get the results by email. They said it was secure, confidential, no judgment. What a joke. There's no such thing as judgment-free when you're questioning your own blood. The weight nearly broke me. I went to work like normal, but my thoughts never left the envelope in transit. I came home, kissed Rachel on the cheek, read bedtime stories to Lily. She clung to me like nothing had changed, because in her eyes, nothing had. But in mine, everything had. Every look between Rachel and me felt layered, forced, like we were two actors reading from different scripts. She didn't know what I'd done. She didn't suspect. Or maybe she did. Because around day 2, she started asking strange questions. Casual, innocent on the surface. "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay? Do you still trust me, Mark? Do you ever think about that first year after Lily was born?" That last one nearly sent me under. Because yes, I thought about it. A lot. Especially now. The way she never wanted to talk about the timing of the pregnancy. How she brushed off the due date math, said it was close enough, that babies come when they want to. And how Chris started pulling away not long after. At the time, I chalked it up to his breakup. A new job. New friends. But looking back, he was avoiding me. And maybe that's when I started remembering things a little differently. The way Rachel would hug him goodbye a little longer than necessary. The night I came home late from work, and they were watching a movie together, lights off, wine glasses out, and both of them jumped like I'd caught them stealing. The quiet apologies. The "you're imagining things" smiles. Gaslighting, but dressed in soft tones. Day 3 came. The email landed at 7:42 a.m., just as I was about to brush Lily's hair before daycare. I didn't open it. Not then. I kissed her on the forehead, told Rachel I'd pick up dinner on the way home, and drove until I found a parking lot with no one else in it. Some sad strip mall with a shuttered dry cleaner and a tax office that hadn't changed its holiday hours since Easter. I opened the email. The words were brief. Clinical. Probability of paternity, 0%. I read it again. And again. I stared at the number like it might change if I blinked hard enough. But it didn't. 0. 0 chance I was Lily's biological father. I felt nothing. At first. Just cold. Like my organs had shut down one by one, retreating to somewhere I couldn't reach. My heart didn't break. It froze. That afternoon, I came home like normal. Gave Lily a piggyback ride. Let Rachel kiss me. But I looked at her like a stranger. Because now I knew. It wasn't a suspicion. It wasn't a fear. It was a fact. And once you know something like that, there's no going back to the world where you didn't. That night, after Lily went to sleep, I stood in the hallway outside her room. Her nightlight threw shadows of fairy tale castles across the wall. I watched her chest rise and fall. So small. So perfect. So not mine. And I cried. Silently. Because grief isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a man in the dark, mourning a truth he never asked for. You know what no one prepares you for? What to do after the truth comes. There's no playbook for what a husband should do the day he finds out his daughter isn't biologically his. No manual for how to keep your hands from shaking when she wraps her arms around your neck and calls you daddy, like nothing's wrong. Because for her, nothing is. The morning after the email, I sat across from Rachel at the kitchen table. She was scrolling through her phone, humming something out of tune, wearing the hoodie she always stole from me when the weather turned. And I hated that I still thought she looked beautiful. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I just watched her, wondering what lies look like in someone's eyes when they're not telling them. But Rachel had a gift. She lied best with silence. That day passed like molasses. I went to work, nodded through meetings, came home, played with Lily. My body moved, but my mind? It was locked in a room with one sentence. Probability of paternity, 0%. And still, I couldn't ask her. Not because I didn't want to know, but because I already did, and I wasn't ready to hear it from her lips. That night, Rachel handed me a glass of wine on the couch. A movie played. I couldn't tell you what it was. Something romantic, probably. Ironic. Halfway through, she looked at me and said, "You've been distant lately." I didn't lie. "Yeah," I said. She hesitated. "Is it work?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. And she knew. She tried to cover it. Tried to add a laugh, said something about needing a vacation. But her eyes flickered like a candle that knew the wind was coming. I asked the question I hadn't rehearsed, hadn't even meant to say out loud. "Rachel, did something happen between you and Chris?" Her smile dropped. Not in fear. In relief. And that's when I knew she'd been waiting. She looked down at her glass, turned it in her hands. "It was a mistake," she whispered. Not a denial. Not even a pause. Just the truth, unwrapped. I didn't yell. Didn't move. I just sat there, holding the glass like it might break if I shifted. When? I asked. She swallowed. That winter you were traveling a lot for work. When Chris was staying with us. My stomach turned. You let me name her, I said quietly. You let me believe. I didn't let you, she snapped. I didn't know. Not for sure. I stared at her. Did you suspect? Her silence was answer enough. I was scared, she said, her voice cracking. I didn't think it would happen. It was one time. One time. One time that unraveled my entire world. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. She blinked, and a tear slid down her cheek. Because you were a good father. You are a good father. I didn't want to take that from her. From you. I stood up. Not because I wanted to leave. Because I was afraid I wouldn't. I walked into Lily's room. She was asleep, one arm flung over her stuffed giraffe, mouth parted slightly, dreamless. She didn't choose this. None of this was her fault. But she'd still carry the weight of it someday. Rachel followed me in, stood behind me in the doorway. I never meant to hurt you, she said. I looked at her over my shoulder. You didn't just hurt me. You took away my right to know the truth. You took away my choice. She didn't speak after that. We both just stood there, staring at the sleeping child who bound us together and now pulled us apart. Because that's what betrayal does. It splits your past in two, the part you remember and the part you now have to question. Chris showed up 3 days later. He didn't knock. Just stood on the front porch like he hadn't helped burn the house down, hands in his jacket pockets, face pale under the early evening light. I saw him through the window and opened the door. For a long second, we didn't speak. Not like brothers. Not even like strangers. Just two men carrying different kinds of shame. I heard, he said finally. Rachel told me you know. I stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind me. I couldn't have that conversation with Lily in the house. I didn't want her to hear a single word. He looked thinner, hollow, like whatever had once made him magnetic had burned too hot for too long, and now only the shell remained. You waited 3 years to come clean, I said. Why now? Chris ran a hand through his hair, the way he used to before confessing to something stupid in high school. Only this time, it wasn't about a dented car or a missed rent payment. This time, it was about a child. I thought she was yours, he said. I hoped. Don't lie to me, I snapped. His eyes flicked up, glassy. Okay, he said softly. I feared she might be mine, but I didn't want her to be. You were the better man, Mark. You always were. I knew what I did, what we did, was wrong. But I told myself it didn't matter if you never found out. That if Lily was yours, the rest could stay buried. And if she wasn't? He looked away. Then I figured I didn't deserve to be in her life anyway. I laughed, bitter, low. That's convenient. He nodded, accepting it. I was jealous of you, he said. Your life, your steadiness. Rachel always looked at you like you were gravity. I'd never had that. And the worst part? When I got it, even for a moment. I couldn't handle it. I ruined it. Like I ruin everything. I leaned against the porch railing, staring out at the street. The sun was setting slow, casting long shadows across the lawn. You know, I said, for 3 years I told myself that no matter what happened, no matter how shaky things got, I could trust my family. My blood. I know, Chris whispered. You were the godfather, I said. You stood next to me in church. You made promises. I meant them, he said, barely audible. I turned to him. Then why didn't you stop? His voice broke. Because I was weak. Because she let me. Because I didn't think it would last, and I didn't think you'd ever find out. And if I'm honest, Mark, because I wanted to matter to someone. We stood in silence. And I hated that I understood what he meant. Not because it excused anything, but because pain often wears the same face, no matter who's looking in the mirror. I didn't want this to be how it ended, he said. Between us. I nodded slowly. It ended the moment she called you Daddy, Chris. That word doesn't belong to you. You forfeited it the minute you walked into my home and pretended you weren't tearing it apart. He swallowed hard. Do you want me to stay away? I didn't answer right away, because it wasn't just about what I wanted anymore. It was about Lily. She doesn't know, I said. And she won't, not now. She knows me as her father. That's not changing. Of course, he said quickly. I'd never. I raised a hand to stop him. If there ever comes a day when she asks questions, I'll decide how to answer them. Not you. You'll follow my lead. And until then, you keep your distance. He nodded like a man getting a sentence he knew he'd earned. I'm sorry, he said. I know. He turned to leave. Chris, I called after him. Did you ever love her? He paused. Then, without looking back, not the way you did. And then he walked away. I stood on the porch long after he disappeared down the street, listening to the quiet hum of a world that hadn't noticed my life had cracked down the middle. When I went inside, Rachel was waiting in the hallway. She didn't speak, didn't cry. She just looked at me like she already knew what had been said. I walked past her, into Lily's room, and sat beside her bed. She stirred, rolled over, reached for my hand in her sleep. I held it tight. Because sometimes, love is a decision you make again and again, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. In the days that followed, nothing really looked different. Lily still asked for extra syrup on her pancakes. Rachel still folded laundry while watching her crime dramas on mute. The sun still rose through the living room windows and lit up the same spots on the rug. But something was gone. Something essential. Trust is a quiet thing. You don't notice it until it's missing. Like a hum in the background, or the weight of a ring you forgot you were wearing. And once it's gone, everything sounds different. Feels different. I slept on the couch. Rachel didn't argue. She made up some excuse to Lily, said Daddy was having back trouble, needed the firmer cushions. Lily accepted it with a nod, too young to understand how silence can mean someone's hurting. Every night, I'd wait until the house was asleep, then I'd go into her room. Not for long. Just long enough to sit on the edge of her bed, brush the hair from her forehead, whisper the same words I'd said since the day she was born. I love you. Always. Because whatever else had changed that hadn't. Never would. But with Rachel, I didn't know what I was supposed to do. Forgiveness doesn't come all at once. It creeps in, if it comes at all. And mine wasn't creeping. She tried, in her own way. Started leaving out coffee for me again. Folded a pair of my socks and left them on the armrest. Once, she came out to the living room and just sat with me while I watched the news, her presence cautious, like she was waiting to see if I'd flinch. I know you don't owe me anything, she said one night, eyes locked on the dark TV screen. But I need you to know I never stopped loving you. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't believe her, but because I wasn't sure if it mattered anymore. She left the room quietly, and I kept staring at the reflection of my own face in the black screen, wondering when I'd started looking like someone I didn't recognize. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. From Chris. It wasn't long. Just one page, folded carefully. No return address. He said he was leaving town. Said it was time. He apologized again, this time without excuses. Said he didn't expect me to forgive him. That he didn't even want forgiveness anymore. He just wanted peace. I'm not the man I thought I could be, he wrote. But I know Lily already has one. You. At the bottom, he included a note for her. Just a single sentence. Tell her I'm proud of who she becomes. I folded the letter and slid it into a drawer I didn't use often. Maybe one day she'd read it. Maybe not. That night, Rachel came out onto the porch where I was sitting with a blanket over my legs and a cup of cold tea in my hands. She looked exhausted, like someone carrying a weight she hadn't put down since the day she saw my face when I opened the DNA results. She sat beside me, close but not touching. Are we going to be okay? She asked. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked out at the street, the glow of the porch light flickering against the mailbox, and said, I don't know what okay means anymore. She nodded. That's fair. But I know this, I added. I'm not leaving Lily. I never thought you would. And you, and I sighed. I don't know if we can get back to what we were. She reached over then, took my hand gently. Maybe not, she said. But what if we start with what we are? It was the first time I didn't pull away. We sat like that for a long time. Two people with too much history and not enough answers. But there was something grounding in the silence, a kind of honesty that hadn't existed between us in years. And later that night, when Lily called out from her room after a bad dream, it was both of us who rushed in. Rachel held her, and I rubbed her back, and we whispered that everything would be okay. Not perfect, not healed, but okay. Because families aren't built in the clean parts. They're built in the rubble and the choosing. Over and over again. It's been 8 months. 8 months since the envelope with Lily's DNA results tore through my life like a quiet storm. 8 months since Rachel stood across from me with trembling hands and the weight of a truth she'd been hiding behind every smile. 8 months since Chris walked off my porch and disappeared from the only family he'd ever known how to break. In that time, the world didn't pause for us. It kept moving, kept demanding, kept asking for normal when we were anything but. And yet, somehow, we began again. Not in the way you might think. Rachel and I never went back to how we were. You can't unburn a bridge. But you can build something next to the ashes if you're willing to get your hands dirty. We started therapy. Separate at first, then, slowly, together. The first session, I couldn't look her in the eyes. The second, I cried. Not because I missed the marriage, but because I missed the man I was before the betrayal. The man who trusted too easily, loved too openly. But the grief didn't destroy me. It refined me. And her? She listened, took responsibility, didn't ask for forgiveness, just the chance to earn my respect again. And strangely, that mattered more. We didn't move back into the same bedroom. Still haven't. Some nights I wonder if we ever will. Other nights, it feels like we already have, in all the ways that count. But through it all, one thing has never wavered. Lily. She's 4 now. She's obsessed with dinosaurs and insists ketchup counts as a vegetable. She draws pictures of our family with shaky stick figures and lopsided hearts. And every time she hands me one, every time she looks up with those big, searching eyes and says, "This one's for you, Daddy," I remember the choice I made. To stay. To love her, not in spite of what I knew, but because she didn't know. Because she shouldn't have to carry the weight of her parents' mistakes. Because her existence wasn't the problem. She was the proof that something beautiful can come from something broken. We haven't told her yet. One day, we will. When she's older. When it won't sound like punishment. When it can be a conversation, not a confession. Until then, she's mine. Not by blood, but by bath time. By boo-boo kisses and bedtime stories and backpacks packed for preschool. By every whispered, "I love you" at the doorway. And Chris? We haven't seen him since he left. Once a month, a postcard shows up. Always from somewhere far. No return address. Just a few scribbled words. Hope Lily's smile is still the same. Tell Mom I'm trying. You were always the better man. I don't know where he is. Don't know if he'll come back. But I do know this. I've stopped waiting for him. Some ghosts are better left in the past. And some people, even family, have to rebuild themselves before they're safe to let in again. I still think about the version of life I thought I had. The clean one. The simple one. But I don't miss it. Because what I have now, it's real. Messy. Honest. Hard-earned. And sometimes, when Rachel's laughing with Lily in the kitchen, and the house smells like waffles and syrup, and the morning sun catches them both in that golden way that makes everything feel possible again, I let myself believe we're not rebuilding what broke. We're building something new. Something we chose. And that's enough. The end. Because sometimes, family isn't about DNA. It's about who stays, who chooses you, and who you choose back, after everything.